I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday, December 31st. We are almost to 2022. We are brought to you guys by the Pigskin Podcast Network, which you can find at PigskinPodNet on Twitter, or you can search the hashtag TPPN. We'll tag that as we go live, as do all the other great podcasts that are part of this network. They've got football, hockey, baseball, soccer, wrestling. Got it all. Check it out for all of your needs. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing on this amazing New Year's Eve? Yeah, that's right.
I'm doing fantastic. My wife had to go to the Rose Bowl, so I'm in another one of those situations. She wasn't supposed to go. They didn't sell enough tickets on the alumni tour, so she was like the fifth or sixth host, so they only sent like 4. Well, Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock, she gets a call from the person who is like in charge of the board of trustees at Ohio State, and her entire staff came down with COVID. So my wife stepped in, and now she's out in LA getting ready to go to the Rose Bowl tomorrow, and I'm at home with my 2 fabulous kids. I guess I don't have to say that. One's at work and one's asleep, so.
These are the assignments that you need to try to get yourself put on. You know, be like, hey, I'll be there, emotional, physical support, just present with you throughout the whole day, anything you need.
Well, my son, if my oldest was a year older, I might have been able to pull it off. But
hey, there's
plenty
of Rose Bowls in Ohio State's future. Let's hope. No, I've got interestingly enough, you say that Jackie's lucky enough to get to go do that. One of my good friends that I've known for almost 2 decades now is actually, he works with ESPN now. He is one of the main cameramen for the SVP show. He is doing the Rose Bowl coverage for ESPN, so he is there as well. So I'm excited for him. He's a big college football fan as well. So it's going to be a great scene. Rose Bowl always is, and having Ohio State Utah, I think it's going to be a great game. So it's going to be fun for them.
Is, you know, much like him, she's working. So she's working 14, 15 hours a day. It isn't like she's just hanging out, seeing LA and going to the game. So.
Yeah. He posted earlier. He sent me a message, I guess, because they got in yesterday. And they were doing a bunch of, I guess, like pre-shot stuff. I don't really know how TV stuff works, but he was trying to explain it to me. And he was explaining that it was like 50 degrees and like pouring rain. Yeah, and they were having to do all this stuff and setting up. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure the weather's going to be fine in a couple days, and you'll at least get to somewhat enjoy. It's probably a little bit different for him because while he's working, he's still like filming the game, so he still gets to watch it. Where I don't know, if she's got to be doing different stuff and all that other stuff. But it's still probably got to be a great experience.
How she described her arrival in LA, she said, it's like we just flew around Columbus for 5 hours and then landed back in town. That's what the weather was like.
Well, at least somebody's getting sunshine. It's been weird because Colorado has not recorded. We had snow, obviously, back in the spring. I think our last snow was in May, but we have not actually had a measurable snowfall in the fall. It's supposed to be coming in off the mountain tonight.
Hopefully it puts those fires out.
Yeah.
That was tough. I'm in Colorado Springs, a little bit further. Those are a little bit north of Denver by Boulder, but We have been getting raked for the last week by nothing but high wind warning. Last night, I actually dropped down to sleep in the basement for a while because my entire house was vibrating and I didn't want to lay up there trying to go to sleep, hoping that my door didn't blow in. But it's still a little bit windy this morning. I'll let the wind and the 50s go. I'm fine to take some temperatures in the 30s and 40s if we can let that wind go, because it was insane. A lot of prayers for the people in Boulder. They've already, as of last night, they had lost more than 500 houses, which is bigger than any of the fires I've lived through here, which have been intense. Just deeply sad. A really tough way to begin the new year. Thoughts and prayers for those people.
Yeah, 100%. All of our thoughts and prayers with them, and hope everybody is able to be safe with that. And hopefully, as you mentioned, maybe with the snow coming in, we can finally put those fires down. No easy way to transition from that to the Dynasty GM. But Dennis, tell us, with our seasons wrapping up, what's a good way people can use a really cool tool to help their Dynasty teams?
Well, there's no off season in Dynasty. We're just getting ready to get fired up. It's going to be trade season, jockeying for draft position, rookie evaluation. Do you want to dominate your Dynasty league? The Dynasty GM from Dynasty Nerds is the tool you need to get the job done. It integrates seamlessly with MFL, Sleeper, Flea Flicker, and FFPC leagues. More leagues are going to be added, or more platforms are going to be added this offseason. You can use the League Analyzer to identify your team's strengths and weaknesses, and then match it up with another team that has opposite strengths and weaknesses to generate a trade that's going to help both. Use the trade calculator to put together league-winning deals, player shares tracker to keep track of your rostership, get exclusive rankings, and more. Use code ROUNDTABLE for 15% off the monthly or annual subscription. Bundle the Dynasty GM with the Nerd Herd to save even more. That's code ROUNDTABLE at dynastynerds.com. Dynasty GM.
I'm still not. The Falcons, sorry if you guys can hear my wife just like laughing away right there in the background.
So my read was funny?
No, she was laughing at me being an idiot, and then I thought didn't realize I muted myself and then unmuted myself, and then that's the whole thing. You know, you guys get to see my stupidity behind scenes. Most people don't get to see that live, so. And you're muted, Matt, so I can't hear what you're saying.
This is our blooper show, so happy New Year.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, we're heading into the new year, having a lot of fun. So the Falcons and the Bills play this Sunday. Falcons are 7-8, Bills at 9-6. Matt, what Falcons do you trust to play this week?
You know, I think Cordero Patterson, you're still playing him because he's maybe not the most powerful rusher, but he gets involved in the passing game. Kyle Pitts, I still think, is a top 12 tight end option with the volume he's getting. Playing against Buffalo, who's been playing better, I might be less bullish on Russell Gage. So it's probably just Patterson and Pitts that I feel solid playing.
Yeah, I think if you have Pitts, you have to start him. Buffalo's giving up the third fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So it's by no stretch an easy matchup. They also give up the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. So the Atlanta passing game could be in trouble. It might be a game to fire up Patterson and Mike Davis. In the last 4 weeks, Patterson is RB28 and Davis is RB31. So they're both flex worthy.
Man, can you imagine having to rest your fantasy championship on Mike Davis?
No, and I wouldn't do it. I mean, it sucks because Cordero's really kind of been coming down at the wrong time, right? Like, he's really not been playing well. I don't know that I trust him. I probably still play Pitts because,
I mean, you pretty much have to. I mean, to quote my good friend Lloyd Bridges, I picked a bad time to quit sniffing glue.
Yeah. With that, the Bills have been on a roll. Dennis, does Devin Singletary stay hot?
You know, Atlanta gives up the 9th most fantasy points to running backs. Singletary has been the RB13 through the last 3 weeks, so it seems like there's a match there. I like what Singletary's been doing, and it seems that McDermott is trusting him a lot more. Gabe Davis is coming back. Cole Beasley's coming back. They've got Stephon Diggs, Dawson Knox. So they have a good passing game. they're not a team that necessarily is going to grind out the clock with the running game, but I'm pretty comfortable starting Singletary as a RB2 this game.
Yeah, they have kind of a 3-man rotation that they've used throughout the season with Breida and Moss and Singletary. It seems like Singletary has kind of established the last few weeks being the lead of that. I'm sure they're trying to protect Josh Allen a little bit with that turf toe, trying to keep him solid for the playoffs. So he is the one I feel the best about playing. I still think I like him more if I'm relying on a flex than necessarily an RB2.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think really good flex option. I mean, obviously Josh Allen, hopefully Stephon Diggs can have big days. You got Gabriel Davis and Cole Beasley coming back. I'd be hesitant to play either one of them. I mean, we've seen it time and time again this year, and go back even to just Tyreek last week. These guys coming off COVID deal a little bit with, I mean, everybody deals with the issues and the symptoms differently, but I'd be a little bit hesitant to put either one of those guys in my lineup this week, just in fear that they may still be suffering a little bit from that. Taking the Bills to win the game.
So am I.
So am I.
The 4-11 New York Giants at the 5-10 Chicago Bears. Dennis, the Giants likely rotating quarterbacks. With that being said, going back and forth between Fromm and Glennon, do you trust any of the receivers?
I mean, talk about a roll of the dice. Kenny Golladay is just not getting in the end zone. It's really a bit of a train wreck there. If I'm gonna roll out any Giants wide receiver, it's gonna be Kadarius Toney, because he can take the 3-yard pass and make it a 15 to 60-yard gain, whereas Golladay is more of a downfield guy. He's going to run those longer, slower developing routes. And with Glennon and Fromm back there, I don't think that bodes well for him. Tony's probably a solid flex play.
No, he's been a non-participant, didn't practice on Thursday. I don't actually think he's going to end up playing.
Yeah, damn it.
The rotating quarterbacks never works for any team, but it's going to work particularly poorly for Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon. I don't want any Giants receiver, because the only hope you have is that someone gets a tight end. Like, that's what made Evan Ingram worth a play last week, because he got a tight end. Because volume of receptions and yardage alone isn't doing it. I'm not even incredibly bullish on Saquon Barkley. I mean, you're playing him because he's an RB2, but there is no one on the Giants I feel great about.
Yeah, I think the for whatever reason, their ability to not get Barkley involved in the passing game is just beyond me. I know for whatever reason they've allowed
Jake Fromm didn't get anyone involved in the passing game.
Well, that part's true, but even before Fromm, like, it seems to be Booker they're using more on third downs than Barkley. Yeah. It sucks, because that's the thing. I mean, chances are you probably have to play Barkley. I don't know if you're in the champ. I am in one championship where I have Barkley, and I'm probably sitting in for Damien Harris this week in hopes that Harris can continue to produce the Patriots back. And it's just weird saying that out loud, that you're benching someone like Saquon Barkley, but that might be the better play. Is, as bad as Chicago's defense has been at times, I mean, with them not getting him involved in the game, I just don't think that you can trust him at all. Matt, who it seems like Dalton is trending toward being the starter for the Bears. They keep talking like Fields is limited in practices, but if whichever goes, if it's Fields, Dalton, how do you feel for them and the receiving options for fantasy?
I thought they were looking at Foles.
Is it Foles again? Last I saw, I didn't even see that Fields had been ruled out yet. Last I saw, he was
Fields hasn't
limited.
Been ruled out.
He's been limited, and Dalton has been practicing. So, I guess it could technically be. Yeah, it could be. I would think if
I don't care
Dalton's
which
bad,
quarterback it is, I don't want any of the quarterbacks, and really, I don't trust any of the receivers. The only receiving asset that I might take a chance on is Cole Kmet, but that's more about the situation at tight end than anything else. We loved Darnell Mooney's talent, but he's not getting consistent volume.
I mean, and with A-Rob coming back from COVID, I think that cuts into Mooney's options a little bit. The downside of that is A-Rob said he lost 10 pounds while he was out with COVID, and so he's going to have to regain his strength, so I would expect he's going to be limited. What this really feels like is a David Montgomery game. The Giants defense is giving up the 8th most fantasy points to running backs, and Montgomery is just producing. He seems to be, he's not giving you, Christian McCaffrey the RB1 vibes, but it seems like every week you can count on him for an RB 8 to 12 performance, and he's doing what he needs to do. He looks really good, and so Monty is the guy I want.
Yeah, Monty should be a great play this week. And Matt, I'm with you on Komet. I mean, if you're struggling at tight end, I mean, I played him last week. Who did I lose? I can't remember who I ended up losing to. I think it may have been.
He ends up getting
Frymouth.
Yeah, he ends up surprisingly getting the most volume at times,
Yeah.
which.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a high upside, but it's a decent floor.
Right around like 6 to 8 points. And I feel like if there's a team he could score against, it's probably the Giants. And I mean, like I have him in 2 spots that I have Freiermuth, and it's just one of those things where, you know, at my point, I might have to end up playing him because I don't know if Freiermuth's going to be cleared from concussion protocol, but
they're almost a flip, though. Cole Kmet seems to be getting plenty of targets between the 20s, and then it's nothing but Jimmy friggin' Graham when they get in the red zone. Whereas Freiermuth, you're pretty much right now, because there's not enough volume in Pittsburgh's passing game, hoping for a touchdown.
Yeah, isn't Freiermuth out though?
Not yet.
He's still questionable.
Okay.
He's still questionable. Yeah, that's why I said like you may end up having, if you're in a situation like that, because you don't want to trust. I mean, probably the only one you're going to be able to pick up is Brian or Njoku. Hooper's probably rostered somewhere. So,
well, if Freiermuth is out, you know they've got Zach Gentry, right?
Not in a championship week.
We're going to be lucky if Pittsburgh can support Deontay Johnson and
don't say that because I have Deontay in a lot of places too, and Najee. I'm so invested in the Steelers.
You know what's questionable is the Steelers' offense in general.
Right.
Oh, I agree with you on that. No, I would also say if Fields does end up playing, I would trust him as a super flex starter. He's been a top 10 quarterback the last couple times that he's played, I think just because of that rushing upside. So if he's good to go, I would feel comfortable putting him in. Not really great option for either one of these teams, but I'm going to take the Bears just because I feel like whichever quarterback they end up starting, those 3 are the better side of the rotation than the 2 the Giants are messing with right now. So I'm going to take the Bears.
Me as well.
Yeah, I'm also taking the Bears.
I almost went 4-11. The 11-4 Kansas City Chiefs at the 9-6 Cincinnati Bengals. Matt, with CEH out, are you cool with firing up Darrell Williams?
Yeah, you know, he's been really good when CEH has been out the last few times. He gets involved in the passing game and the rushing game. They've been relying on the run game more. So I think Darrell Williams could be a running back too this week.
I mean, it comes down to the options you have, I think. The Bengals can be kind of stingy to running backs. They're giving up the 8th fewest fantasy points. So I'm probably more comfortable with Williams as a flex play. It's just, it's coming down to the options you have here in the finals. Williams will definitely get, as the word definitely came out of my mouth, I remembered Derek Gore. So, what the hell, who knows? But I think Williams is a comfortable flex play.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I actually wouldn't mind playing him as an RB2, but the Gore thing, Derek not Frank Gore scares me a little bit. That is what because he gets a lot of those receptions. Williams has been a good runner though at times when CEH is out. So regardless, we feel comfortable playing him whether it's in your RB2 or your flex spot. Real quick before we move on to the Bengals side, Dennis, I mean, you feel fine, assuming you survived not having Kelsey or Hill last week, one more week removed from dealing with everything you're good to fire them up in your week. You're not worried about any kind of ramifications?
Well, I think you're worried every week now. It just is, it's the wild, wild west out there. And so if I have Kelsey, he's in my lineup. And if I have Hill, he's in my lineup. I can't imagine there's, 12 other tight ends or 24, 36 other wide receivers that I'm going to put over them. So, I'm going to roll them out there. Do I expect that, they're going to score 20 and 30 points? Probably not. But, I think I can probably get 18 to 20 out of Hill and 14 to 17 out of Kelsey.
Yeah, this might be a lower scoring game than we're thinking, because both these defenses are decent. We'll do some things to test the offense, but if you have Hill or Kelsey, I think you have to play them as long as they're active.
The thing that's weird is, so Cincinnati, they're 7th in sacks in the NFL. But they're really low. They're like bottom third in pressures and hurries. So they're either sacking the quarterback or they're just not getting there. So that's going to be a problem. So even if, let's say, they get 5 or 6 sacks on Mahomes, he's still likely to have a ton of time back there on the other snaps. So.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on Hill and Kelsey, and I'll also just add in really quick, and if either one of you disagree, you can let me know. I'm still not starting Hardman or Pringle. I just can't. I know they had good games last week, but don't. Okay, I just wanted to double check, because they had the good games last week, and I get.
Yeah, we saw Pringle's best game of the year last week, so if you started him last week, props to you, but not this week.
I think you hit mute, Matt.
I thought I hit the button as I was trying to switch back and forth there. Dennis, with can Burrow keep it up here against what has been a resurgent Chiefs defense?
Yeah, I think Burrow can. The issue really comes down to what the tools Burrow can accomplish. Kansas City's allowed the 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, but they're 16th to running backs, 23rd to wide receivers, and 13th to tight ends. So you take that and you take that defense, and then you take a team that has a bunch of weapons, and now it's like, well, who are you going to bet on? I think Burrow is the play there. You're not going to sit Higgins. You're not going to sit Chase. You're probably not going to sit Boyd, and you're not sitting Mixon, but you may want to temper expectations. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because they are really explosive. And if Burrow can get the time, Kansas City gives up despite the perception that their defense is great, they get the 4th fewest sacks in the NFL, but they have the 2nd highest hurry rate and 6th highest pressure rate per Pro Football Reference. So they get to the quarterback, they're just not converting it into sacks. That could cause turnovers. They're very opportunistic with Sorensen and Matthew and Bolton and Gay. So they do have an opportunistic defense. But I think that Burrow, I'm definitely rolling Burrow out, and it's in a start your stud scenario. You're going to start those other guys too.
Yeah, from a fantasy perspective, we love it when Burrow goes for huge numbers like he did last week, and we've seen them be successful that way. The Bengals are also 4-0 when Burrow throws for less than 200 yards this season, so they've also been adept at grinding out wins. I tend to feel like this is going to be one of more of those grinder games. I think Burrow will be fine as long as he can avoid turnovers, but I am definitely not having the same expectations I had last week when they were playing a team they had put up 40 before, and they put up 40 again. I don't think you're going to see 500 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this game is very close for like 2 to 3 quarters, and then if someone starts pulling away, like we start seeing them throwing it all over each other, Mahomes and Burrow in that 4th quarter trying to get that win. But I'm with you guys. You're starting all of those guys. Maybe you lower obviously you don't expect T. Higgins to go out there another 50-point burger, like a 50 burger. It's not going to happen, but you drop expectations a little bit for Higgins and Chase, but they're still going to play. And I think Mixon is the guy really for the Bengals, because Matt, you just mentioned it. They seem to win when Mixon's playing. And earlier in the year, we saw the Chiefs were really good at giving up, or not good. They were bad at stopping the run. So can Mixon kind of do that here again? Having Frank Clark back has definitely helped that defense, but he's the guy here. I am solely taking the Chiefs here because I need them to win for the Browns to have that slight chance of making the playoffs. But I honestly think the Bengals are going to win. But I'm picking the Chiefs in hopes that, good karma and all that other good stuff.
I'm not a chicken shit. I'm picking the Bengals.
I actually think the Chiefs are going to win. I think that they want to get that top seed.
I stopped being afraid to pick the Bengals. I want to pick the Bengals. I just need to pick the Chiefs because I need the Browns to make the playoffs. So I need the
I
Bengals to lose. That's
I
the only
know.
reason I'm
I
doing it.
know. I'm giving you shit.
The 8-7 Miami Dolphins are at the 10-5 Tennessee Titans. Miami has won 7 straight. Matt, can they make it 8?
I think they can. They've been one of the hottest teams. They've had great defense. It hasn't really mattered that they don't have consistent star play on offense. Jalen Waddle's been great, and Tennessee's defense has not been incredible all season. They've had some moments. If Tua can play well, I think that they really want to get to that Week 18 game against the Patriots and have that be kind of an all or nothing game, which is where it's tracking.
Yeah, Duke Johnson certainly came back down to earth last week. Is that experiment over or no?
Miami is using some kind of idiot. I would not play a single Miami running back. They're using some kind of dreadful rotation.
Yeah. The Titans are giving up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers. And so I'm certainly firing up Jalen Waddle. And then I'm firing up Mike Gesicki too. While they're tough against tight ends, Gesicki only lines up at tight end like 6.4% of the time. 56% in the slot and 30% out wide, according to JetsXFactor.com. So he's basically a big ass wide receiver, and he's their number 2 receiver behind Waddle. He's ahead of Parker. So I'm firing up both of those guys. If I can get Gesicki out there at tight end and or even a flex with him getting the kind of volume he is from a wide receiver position, but he's tight end eligible, that's a win.
Yeah, I'm going to go the opposite way of Gesicki, and I'm actually willing to start Parker. When he's been out there, he's been good. Now, last week he got the Marshawn Lattimore experience, which, he shuts down better wide receivers, so that's not surprising. But with Parker being out there, Dennis, you just mentioned, they give up so many points to the wide receiver position. Waddle's obviously going to be the focus, but I would not feel bad about starting Parker in a flex spot at all. I think he can come through for you, get you 10 to 12 points this week with as bad as that Tennessee defense has been.
What I can tell you is when I go to Disney, I am certainly not riding the Marshawn Lattimore experience. I would have fun.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't really go anywhere. It's a 0-point experience.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, it really doesn't. Matt, for the Titans here, how do we feel about A.J. Brown going up against a very good defense?
Yeah, A.J. Brown is a different kind of player. Maybe he doesn't get 11 for 145 and a touchdown, but I still think he returns at least wide receiver 2 value. I'm starting him.
I think he returns top 5. The Dolphins, while they have a good defense, they give their top 10 in fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. And the only show in town is A.J. Brown. He's a grown-ass man. You fire him up and ride him to the championship.
Yeah, I think you have to fire him up. I don't know how good he's gonna. I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be top 12 more than likely. But I think the issue with some of that is while the Dolphins defense has given up a ton of wide receivers, I think a lot of that was earlier this year because they've really kind of shut down here in the second half. They've been one of the better defenses. So knowing that A.J. Brown is really the only threat in town, are you willing to start the Dolphins defense this week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Dolphins have been shutting down these high-powered offenses, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, the Carolina Panthers, the New York Jets, the Houston Texans. Yeah, they've been kicking it up the last 7 weeks.
Hey, Houston Texans offense has actually been pretty good. Don't you disrespect Davis Mills like that.
They're good relative to expectations.
Let's just be honest here though. Like Davis Mills, Ryan Tannehill, that's a pretty even scale, I think, at least with the way they've been playing this year. But I think that I'd fire him up. I would. I'm taking the Dolphins. I said, what was that, Matt? Like 4 or 5 weeks ago that I thought it was going to come down to that Week 17 matchup. They've got to win today to make that happen, or Week 18. I'm sorry, Week 18 matchup. So they've got to win today or Sunday to make that happen. I'm taking the Dolphins.
I'm also taking the Dolphins.
It's another clean sweep.
It's not good. It's not good, boys. This is not looking good.
No, we've been in the zone. I was like 11-5 last week, so you guys had to have been pretty close.
The 8-7 Las Vegas Raiders going up against the 9-6 Indianapolis Colts. Dennis, which Raiders are you trusting here going up against the Colts?
I want to trust Josh Jacobs. Bisaccia's been a lot more willing to give him the ball. Maybe it's a function of Kenyon Drake being out, Jalen Richard coming back and not being the kind of guy you want to give a whole lot of touches to. He's been RB10 the last 4 weeks. Colts are tough. They've given up the 7th fewest points to running backs. I think you've got your starting Jacobs probably is an RB2 if he's on your roster. If you're fortunate enough to be able to flex him, then lucky you. They give up the 7th most fantasy points. Wait, wrong one. The Colts give up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends. But I mean, who can you trust on the Raiders? Waller's coming back. If he plays, is he going to split time with Moreau? You just don't know if he's going to step back into his 12 target spot or if they're going to ease him back in and split time with Moreau. If for some reason Waller is out again this week, I think you're okay firing up Renfro as a Hail Mary kind of tight end.
Moreau, you mean?
Yeah, that dude. God damn it.
If Waller is active, I'm playing him. I'm playing Hunter Renfro regardless. If Waller is not active, I don't want Foster Moreau because I just don't think there's the same chemistry or anything. I agree with Dennis about Jacobs. You're probably playing him, but low end RB2. And then, Derek Carr's been decent. There are worse super flex options out there. Tannehill.
Yeah. I thought Darren Waller was out. Is he not? I thought he
was he returned to practice.
Okay.
And he's tracking toward he heard that they still were in the playoff race, so he got healed up. Oh no, now he just got put.
That's what I'm about to say. I thought he got put on the COVID list. I thought he got put on the COVID list. I thought he was out. So
he returned to practice yesterday, so I was very excited. No,
which one of them bastards gave him COVID in practice yesterday?
That's what I was trying to figure out.
Foster Moreau. He's trying to be the thing. So then, with Waller out for me, it's Renfro, Jacobs, and I would consider Carr in Superflex.
I think it's just Jacobs. I don't even know that Renfro has a good day here against this Colts defense. Matt
just to find touchdowns in the most unlikely of scenarios.
That part is very true. Carson Wentz is likely out. How do we feel about Pittman, who's really the only receiving option we're worried about here if Ellinger is the quarterback for the Colts?
Well, I think it tells you all you need to know that the Colts went ahead and I believe Wentz, they said he's probably that there's a very slim chance because I think he was unvaccinated. So not feeling good about that.
He's doing his research.
It was very telling that the Colts were willing to admit that they called Phillip Rivers and asked him to come back to play, which has got to be the biggest confidence boost in the world for Sam Ellinger, who's like, oh, you'd rather have the high school football coach who hasn't been on a professional field in 12 months than to have me go out there. Okay. But that's probably how we all feel. Very bullish on Jonathan Taylor, even though the Raiders were able to bottle up the Denver running backs last week. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to have to carry them. If you have Pittman, you're probably starting him because he's been so good this season, but I do not have a good feeling about Sam Ellinger. I do not have a good feeling that the Colts are excited about having Sam Ellinger.
Yeah, it's to quote The Office, not great, Bob. Maybe that's something else.
That's Mad Men, right? That's Mad Men. Yeah, it's Mad Men.
Whatever. I only have seen the GIF, not the show.
Gotcha.
Not great, Bob. The Raiders do give up the 7th most fantasy points to running backs. The thing we have to worry about here is Frank Reich getting cute. If he doesn't get cute and just gives the ball to Jonathan Taylor, then they have a shot.
Seems like Frank Reich's seen Sam Ellinger play also. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to hate all on Sam Ellinger. I wonder how much of that, too, is. I mean, they are still in the playoff race. They need to win to kind of keep pushing for that. And maybe it's one of those things like, well, we trust Phillip Rivers because he is a veteran and has been here before. but it's probably not great.
You saw Philip
Ellinger
Rivers
probably
at the end of
solved that.
last year. No one was
That's
shocked that he
true.
retired.
But I don't know. I don't want to hate too much on Ellinger. Yeah, Taylor's.
I will say
definitely
Philip Rivers made Ben Roethlisberger look like a deep ball threat last year.
Fair point. So, that's exactly what Pittman needs. So, with all that being said, man, this is actually. I'm going to go Raiders. I think they get the upset.
I'm going to stick with the fighting Jonathan Taylors.
I'm also taking MVP Jonathan Taylor and the Indianapolis Colts.
The 2-3 Jacksonville Jaguars at the 9-6
2-13.
2-13. Sorry, 2-3 is practically the same thing. At the 9-6 New England Patriots, Matt, with Robinson out, are you playing any Jaguars in championship week?
Absolutely not. The Patriots have a good defense. I think Jacksonville is going to be awful.
Patriots defense number 1 in fantasy scoring this week. I think it's a realistic possibility.
100%.
Yeah,
it's a train wreck there. You don't want nothing to do with any of that.
All right, so let's move on to sunnier pastures here, and that's New England. Damien Harris went off in Week 16. Dennis, are we in for a repeat?
My hope is that they commit. It looks like Stevenson was activated from COVID, if I remember. Hopefully, they don't decide to do a wacky 3-headed timeshare with Stevenson, Harris, and Brandon Bolden. I think you fire him up. He's played really, really well. He's healthy as you can be in Week 17 of the NFL season. He looks good. I like Harris.
I would like to like Harris, but there are two things holding me back. One, Josh McFucking Daniels and his never-ending player rotations. And two, Damien Harris was added to the injury report with a hamstring injury that has caused him to be a limited participant in practice. And that gives me a huge amount of pause that they're going to rotate with Ramondre Stevenson.
Don't put that juju on me, Matty Bobby.
Well, I think if the Patriots get up big, which, they may not even need an offense to get up big against Jacksonville, then we see them rest Harris, who is probably a better weapon for them in the playoffs and against Miami. And we see a lot of Bolden and Stevenson.
Yeah, I think the only thing in that scenario is hopefully Harris goes off before that, or at least get you a little bit, maybe get you 60, 70 yards and a touchdown, and then they're kind of like, okay, take a seat. I'm playing him because of what he's done. I've thought he's the better running back for the Patriots. Now, the thing that always worries me is it always seems like Bill, once a guy goes off, he switches him and puts the new guy in. It's like, hey, you did great for us last week, son. Take a seat. Let Ramondre go out there and show us what he can do. So it's, I guess, kind of what you get when you're relying on New England running backs, and that's usually heartbreak. But I am with you guys. I'm starting Harrison and hoping for the best of this week. Taking the Patriots.
Me too.
As am I.
The 11-4 Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the 4-11 New York Jets. Dennis, which Bucks are you playing this week? Just so you know, Mike Evans has just been pulled off the COVID-19 list. Does not mean that he'll play because he is still technically dealing with the hamstring issue, but that is at least good that he's been removed off the COVID-19 list.
It should be a smash spot for Rojo, but it comes down to who does Bruce Arians hate the least? Is it Rojo or is it Keyshawn Vaughn? Because clearly he hates both of them. I think you got to fire up Ronald Jones if you roster him, and the expectation is flex worthy, maybe low end RB2. But with Vaughn popping off for that 55-yarder last week, I could see Arians getting a little, curious about it and say, okay, well, I've been riding his ass for 2 years now. Maybe he's finally come around and let me put him out there. We've seen Vaughn drop pass when he first got in the game, when Fournette got injured. We've seen him not be a great blocker. But we know Rojo is an awful blocker and a worse pass catcher. So I feel like it's a 50 attempt game for Tom Brady, even though they're playing the Jets, just because they're going to not want to do anything with the running back. So I'm starting AB, Gronk, maybe even O.J. Howard.
If you're starting O.J. Howard, you're just basically giving up on the championship. I think Keyshawn Vaughn's run last week was a good sign for the future, where he might actually end up having a role next year. But Ronald Jones was still RB12 in week 16. He got the majority of the carries, and he did plenty with it. I am starting him. I'm definitely starting Antonio Brown, who's playing for that incentive money. A lot was made of he had very makeable marks in terms of receptions, yardage, and touchdowns over the last 3 games to be able to, and it certainly looked like Tom Brady read his contract as well with the way he was targeting him. I'm a little more, you're playing Gronkowski, but he has been in a little bit of a funk the last few weeks, even in games where he was pretty well the only big time receiving target. They just haven't gotten the ball to him with as much consistency, and Cameron Brate has been getting a few more targets. So if you were going to take a flyer on a second tight end, for me, it would not be Howard. It would be Brate. But I think also if Evans plays, you got to put him in there, because in the red zone, Evans seems to have magic. He may not get you 100 yards. He may not get you 50 yards, but he could catch 2 passes and both of them be for 2 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, that would be the only reason I'd play Evans. I just mentioned earlier, these guys coming off the COVID list have kind of struggled at times, but because of what he can do in the red zone, all it takes is we saw it multiple times last year, right? He had like 4 catches for like 6 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's all that matters right there. So I'd be willing to play him as well if he is good to go. I'm taking the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the matchup.
So we're not even going to talk about the Jets?
Oh,
there's no one that you should feel confident starting. Michael Carter's been good, but not against Tampa Bay.
So Tampa Bay has given up the 2nd most receptions to running backs in the NFL this year. They've given up 102 receptions to running backs.
I've also seen the Jets play.
4th most touchdowns. I'm just saying he's probably flex worthy depending on who your options are.
I'm also taking the Buccaneers, and I guess I would flex Carter, but I'm really moderating expectations for any Jet.
Bucks for me as well.
Yeah, I would not flex Carter, but I do apologize.
Do you think the NFL, like back in July, thought that some of these Week 17 matchups were going to be incredible, and they've gotten to Week 17 and been like, I done fudged up?
Probably. Didn't they? Did they not flex the Monday night game, right? It wasn't supposed to be Browns Steelers, was it?
Yeah, it was. It was always Browns Steelers.
Okay. I can't remember. But
I don't think they can flex a Monday night game. They could flex a Sunday night matchup.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure that they don't love some of these. It's more of like, I will say props to Zach Wilson, because he's definitely played better, at least last week. But I think this
as a rusher anyway
going to confuse the hell out of him. I don't know how much that's going to help out. I would just be very hesitant. Carter did have a good week last week, so I could be wrong. All right, the 8-7 Philadelphia Eagles are at the 6-9 Washington football team. Matt, which Eagles are you comfortable starting this week?
Well, I'm still starting Jalen Hurts. I'm still starting Dallas Goedert, though it was very heartbreaking what he did last week, or what he didn't do last week. Devonta Smith is still a flex-worthy dart throw. The backfield, I honestly, the more I've thought about it, I don't want to play anyone.
Yeah, the backfield is a real roll of the dice. Maybe it's Boston Scott. Gainwell has 43 receptions this year, and he's been out of the game a ton. He's been inactive and stuff. So when he's played, he's been productive. Same with Jordan Howard. When they give him the ball, he's productive. But yeah, I'm trying to avoid the Eagles' backfield. Goddard went off 2 weeks ago. He had 7 catches or 8 catches for 135 yards against WFT.
He had 2 incredible weeks in a row, one with Minshew and then one with Hurts, and it seemed like they were turning around. And then last week it was like Dallas who?
Right. Well, I still like Goddard. He was I substituted on the tight end start sit column, and he was definitely one of my starts this week.
Yeah, I want to say, and I can't remember exactly what they said about him, but it was almost like that was part of the game plan, unfortunately, to not get Goddard that involved last week. Sirianni talked about it, because I know that they supposedly missed Goddard once. I didn't watch a lot of the Eagles game last week. I'm going to be 100% honest about that. But They, I guess he was wide open in the end zone for one, but he didn't pass it to him. And then Sirianni talked about they were trying to get like Smith involved, who I actually would play this week. I think Devonta Smith could have a big
It was
game.
particularly brutal because they were playing the Giants, which are
Yeah.
known for just being a sieve against the tight end.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do. But yeah, I'm with you. The one thing I'm starting Hurts. The one thing that worries me is I know he had the big game against Washington. Was that 2 weeks ago? But it
Yep.
was really buoyed by I think he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and both of them were just like kind of QB sneaks in. He hasn't quite been running as much since dealing with that ankle injury. I think he's still going to be fine because even last week, I think he had like 30 or 40 rushing yards. And I know Sirianni said they did not have any designed run plays for him. So that was just him scrambling out of the pocket, which you're going to get with him. But I'm curious if when they get down into the red zone, because of the way they're rotating all those backs, if they don't allow him to get those QB sneaks in, which will bring him down a little bit. But I'm still playing him. I don't know that he's got that top 5 value where I think he finishes like QB 2 or 3 that week because of the the rushing touchdowns. Dennis, how do you feel about Terry McLaurin this week? I mean, kid just can't catch a break with his quarterback play.
My heart breaks for him. It's been a lost year for him. I mean, if you roster him, you have to start him. You probably spent a 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th round pick on him. He's sitting at wide receiver 25 on the year, wide receiver 27 in points per game. It's not an awful year, but the expectations were just so much higher for him. I love McLaurin and what he brings to the table, but yeah, they need a quarterback in Washington in the worst way.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. He might be wide receiver 25 on the season, but since week 13, he's wide receiver 83. So I do not think he's an automatic start, especially with Ron Rivera coming out this week and saying he's preparing Taylor Heineke and Kyle Allen and expects to play them both. This is that dreaded quarterback rotation. I don't think either of those guys are great. It's been a precipitous fall for Heineke, who I thought mid-season maybe had played himself into a chance to show what he could do as the guy. It's not happening. They need to do something else. I am very nervous. If you have some other options, if you have like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm playing him over Terry McLaurin. I'd play Hunter Renfrow over Terry McLaurin. I'm trying to think of some other guys in that range. He has just not returned very much value.
I can give you names because I've got him on a championship team I'm playing in a redraft league. I traded for him. This is how upset I am about this trade. I traded him earlier in the year. It was back in like week 6 or 7. It was like Jarvis Landry, Kenyon Drake, and someone else, and I got Terry McLaurin back. Jarvis Landry has outscored him by like a country mile since I made that trade, and Landry was out for multiple weeks because of the injury as well. So I'm with you. I am unfortunately not playing McLaurin this week, not even just add everything together. Philly's defense has been playing good. They've been getting pressure on the quarterbacks. He's likely going to get Slay most of the game, unless Slay is out, which I know he was dealing with an injury, but everything I saw recently, he's going to play. So it's likely Slay matching up against McLaurin, and then he's dealing with the rotating quarterbacks. I'm starting Marquise Hollywood Brown and Devontae Parker over Terry McLaurin in a league this week just because – look, I might be wrong. McLaurin might end up going out there and balling out, and that'll be on me if you want to use the whole start your studs thing. But McLaurin just has not, and I don't think it's him. We know he's a talented player. They have just not been able to get him the ball and allow him to produce for that team. As Matt, you just mentioned, wide receiver 80. Like I'm just not taking that chance this week. I'm going for guys I think get me at least some points.
So let's play either or.
Okay.
Van Jefferson or Terry McLaurin.
I probably play McLaurin. I know the Rams are going up against Baltimore's horrid pass defense. But even then, I think that's Cooper Kupp, Odell, then Van for me. I'm taking the 1 on Washington, even as bad as they could be.
Yeah, I would probably play Terry there.
Terry McLaurin or Michael Gallup?
Who are the Cowboys playing again?
I'd play Gallup. They're playing Arizona. I think Gallup has a better chance of getting a 40-yard bomb, as we saw last week, than Terry McLaurin.
I think I'd still lean McLaurin just because of I mean, they may not throw the ball to Cooper again, but I think I'd go McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin or Marquez Callaway?
McLaurin.
McLaurin.
I mean, who even knows if
Terry McLaurin or KJ Osborne? Oh, I guess.
Well, McLaurin now.
Kirk-
Because
McLaurin now. It would have been Osborne.
It would have
a
been
day ago.
Osborne.
Yeah.
Kellen Mond does not strike fear in the heart of.
Oh, it's not even Kellen Mond. It's Sean Mannion.
Sean Mannion.
Sean Mannion is the starter. Yeah. It would have been. Yeah, I agree with Matt. It would have been Osborne a day ago. It is now Terry McLaurin. Because I actually had that choice as well, and I had Osborne in.
McLaurin or Rashad Bateman?
Rashad Bateman. That's going to be a shootout. Baltimore has to win that game.
Probably Bateman, because I think Huntley's back, and even if Jackson's back, not really tracking like he can play.
He's sitting today. I just looked at he's not.
Well, they said he did a practice on Wednesday and came out limping really badly and wasn't able to go yesterday or today. Those are bad signs.
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially if Huntley's in, that's great news for Andrews and Bateman because he was feeding those two the ball. It's actually probably bad news for Hollywood.
Josh Johnson was feeding them pretty good too. So
I think either way, I'm playing.
Quarterbacks know where their bread is buttered. That's for sure.
Yeah. All right. So with that being said, I'm taking the Eagles.
Eagles for me.
Well.
All right, we have got the 11-4 Los Angeles Rams going up against the 8-7 Baltimore Ravens we were just talking about. Dennis, how do we feel about starting Sony Michel? You know, all the talk, obviously, about them activating Akers. We talked a lot about this on Monday's show. I honestly don't think Akers is going to get a lot of run here, but what do you think about starting Sony in a championship matchup?
I feel like starting Sony is strong like a bull. Sony is going to, I mean, McVay came out and said that it's highly unlikely that Akers plays. I think we know that it was gamesmanship for the most part. They did him a favor. The fact that he might play was gamesmanship, but they activated him so he could get his pension year accrual. But if he plays this year, it's a damn miracle. I mean, I get he may come back and be the best player ever to come back from a torn Achilles at the running back position, and he may be the best player by far, but he's not going to do it in half the time that a normal Achilles recovery takes. You know, he may be out there jogging, running, but no, no.
Yeah, if Akers gets a snap or two, that's a huge win. I would be surprised if he even gets a carry. Henderson's on IR. He's gone. Sony Michel has been RB3 the last 4 weeks since he stepped in as the starter. I'm starting him, and I'm not thinking twice about it.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, like I said, we talked a lot about it on Monday. It seems like they 100% activated Akers to allow him to hit the stuff in his contract to get that money, which is, and again, I will say props to the Rams organization for doing that because we've seen many organizations that don't. So props to them for taking care of that player. It's Sony Michel all day long. Matt, who starts at quarterback for the Ravens this week, and how does that affect the rest of the team around them?
Well, first of all, it's looking a hell of a lot better than it was a week ago where no one was available except for Josh Johnson. I thought he acquitted himself pretty well, but Huntley's been activated. Lamar Jackson, we just mentioned a minute ago, tried to practice on Wednesday, came out limping, didn't go yesterday, didn't go today. I honestly do not think he gets in there, in part because we've seen Huntley be really decent. Will COVID have an effect on him? It's had an effect on others. Maybe it affects him more running, but he's been a decent passer. And so I have pretty good confidence in the passing pieces of that offense if Huntley gets in.
I think, I don't know that given the status of Lamar's ankle, I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. Lamar's agility and ability are what separates him from virtually every other quarterback. You take that away, he's Huntley, he's Josh Johnson. Johnson went 28 for 40 last week with 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he targeted Andrews 10 times, Marquise Brown 9 times. He knows what the deal is. He's going out there and he's executing it. So I think that you start your Ravens quarterback with a, high QB2, mid QB2 expectation because they're going up against the Rams.
Yeah, I mean, Huntley coming back, I feel like it makes me feel a little bit better about the entire offense. Josh Johnson really fed Mark Andrews last week. He had that massive day. Now, Huntley was doing the same thing as well, but he was still getting Hollywood involved and Rashad Bateman. So I feel good playing all of them. And it does look like Huntley is tracking toward being the guy, as we were just talking about with Lamar likely not playing. So feel good about the Ravens and all their players there. I think they're going to put up a good fight, but I just think the Rams have so much to play for. I think they're the better team. I'm taking the Rams.
As am I.
As am I.
Football fans, I'm sure we all love an action-packed, high-scoring NFL game, but with the latest no-brainer from DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, you'll be a winner once a single point is scored. New customers who bet just $1 on any team to score can win $100 in free bets. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available in your state, you can still get in on the NFL action. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports Contest. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet $1 on any team to score and win $100 in free bets. If they score, you score with promo code TPPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit, $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The 7-8 Denver Broncos are at the 8-7 Los Angeles Chargers. Matt, it looks like Drew Locke is going to be starting once again. Are there any receivers you are starting?
Yeah, it's interesting. Drew Locke was quarterback 3 last week, according to Pro Football Focus. The problem was the Broncos couldn't block a fart in the wind. I don't know if that gets any better.
To be honest, it dissipates pretty quickly. That is a difficult task.
I don't know if it gets any better this week. They have a lot of guys that have been put on COVID, including Tim Patrick and a couple offensive linemen. I still like Sutton with Drew Locke. I think they're more likely to take shots, although Pat Shurmur lined up Cortland Sutton as a hand-on-the-ground tight end a few times last week because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So it's hard to have any kind of confidence in anything Denver's doing on offense.
The Chargers are giving up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers, but it's because they give up the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. But that's because they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. So I think it's the only thing that's going to really help the passing game is if the Chargers get out to a big lead and Denver has to throw, because it looks like Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon should be able to put up some fantasy points against the Chargers defense.
Both of them are a little banged up, though, so that's something to watch. Melvin Gordon has a hip and a thumb injury, and Javonte Williams has a knee injury.
Dennis, Eckler and Williams are tracking to return. What do we expect from them and Justin Herbert?
Well, Denver gives up the 8th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, but I think Herbert still gets it done. He's probably he's a top 3 dynasty quarterback. I mean, I think I shared with you guys some trades I was getting offered this past week for Herbert in an Empire League that my team is clearly in rebuild, and despite overpays, I just could not bring myself to trade away Justin Herbert. I think he's gonna he'll get some done. The thing with Eckler comes down to how is his health after coming off of COVID? Is the stamina there? Is the strength there? If he's not severely affected, then I expect he could have a normal game. But if he's winded, we saw Justin Jackson put up a phenomenal game last week. So the Chargers have no qualms about going to the backup if Eckler needs a blow. And we've seen Jackson can put up some points.
So the Broncos actually beat the Chargers when they played the first time this year, which was kind of a surprise. And they did it by forcing Justin Herbert into some costly turnovers and interceptions. The Chargers have played better on the road than they have at home, and we've seen Herbert struggle with some untimely turnovers, especially in home games. So I'm be a little bit cautious. I think this could end up being another low-scoring game. Their first matchup was a game that was in the teens. I expect this is going to be the same.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that high scoring either. Mike Williams, as Dennis just mentioned, may still be dealing with some issues. We've seen that happen a lot with these guys. Denver has a good secondary. Keenan Allen, I think, is going to be the likely guy Herbert goes to, but I could see them shutting him down a little bit. And Eckler as well is coming back from that. Do they still play Justin Jackson with as good as he was this past week? I think this could be a low scoring game for the Chargers Broncos. I'm taking, though, the Chargers to win the game.
Chargers for me as well.
I'm taking the Chargers as a reverse jinx.
The 4-11 Houston Texans at the 8-7 San Francisco 49ers. Matt, are we buying Rex Burkhead as a fantasy starter again this week?
I don't think he gets 150 yards again, but I didn't think he was going to get 150 yards last week, so who knows? But actually, the way they are using him and the way that offense has been playing, I do feel comfortable putting him in a flex spot.
Yeah, I mean, he's what they got. They haven't activated David Johnson off of COVID yet, as far as I'm aware. Nobody's rolling out Scotty Phillips. Royce Freeman continues to unimpress. So, Burkhead's averaging 15.1 points a game over the last 3 weeks. So he's going to go out there. He's probably good for 10 to 12 points this week, which is good in your flex. If you're not playing, if you're looking for a floor flex, Burkhead is your guy. The Niners are susceptible to the passing game, and Davis Mills has severely outperformed everybody's expectations for him, and he's starting to get that connection with Nico Collins going. So Brevin Jordan's looking good, even with Brandon Cooks out on COVID. They could put up some points. Are they going to score 35? Probably not, but they could make it competitive for a couple quarters.
Yeah, I think a low-end flex play is the right place for him. Dennis, what do we expect from Trey Lance this week, who is likely going to get the start with a banged-up Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, I don't know. I'm going to defer to you. You're our college scout of the group. What do you think is Lance has looked not ready earlier this season. Is he ready now?
I mean, nothing that I've seen in the limited time we got to see him on the field shows that he is ready, and I don't know that I trust Kyle Shenanigans either with the way that he's handled anything in San Francisco. I think if they run the RPOs well, I think he can be fine. He's obviously a rushing threat as well, but him diagnosing coverages, not forcing balls in is going to be the big thing. We've seen the Texans defense has actually been playing pretty good the past couple of weeks. So I think that if you do play him, if he does start, he's probably a top 15 quarterback, maybe top 12 because of the rushing upside, because I would not be surprised if he takes off quite a bit in this game. But I would bet, especially if Elijah Mitchell comes back, which I know they're saying there's a chance that he plays this week, I wouldn't be surprised if Shanahan leans heavily on that running game, maybe a bunch of screen passes to Debo and Ayuk and relying on Kittle more than putting the game in Lance's hands.
Yeah, I feel like we're probably looking at one or two deep shots, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty much the short passing game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because Jimmy G has played well enough down the stretch that the 49ers are really going to have to consider what they want to do long term. I think it's good for them if they get a chance to see Lance start another game to give them some kind of idea of how he can adjust, how he can fare. When he made a start in week 5, he was QB 20, but he didn't have a touchdown either as a rusher or a passer and had a turnover. I think he will get at least 1 or 2 touchdowns against the Texans. I think he's going to be good from a fantasy perspective. I don't know if we'll walk away saying, man, he's a great quarterback, but I think he'll be fine from a fantasy perspective.
All right. That's it. 49ers.
Yeah, me as well.
I'm also taking the 49ers.
The 10-5 Arizona Cardinals at the 11-4 Dallas Cowboys. Dennis, which Cardinals pass catcher do you like? Is Zach Ertz the top option again this week?
Yeah, I think Ertz is, but I also like Kirk. I want to say I didn't write down the time frame that I looked at when I grabbed these numbers for the receivers, but I think it was probably 4 or 5 weeks. Kirk is wide receiver 11, AJ Green is 46, and Antoine Wesley. Maybe it's only 3 weeks. Antoine Wesley was wide receiver 80. Kirk has stepped up and is the guy there, and Ertz is the guy. From the passing game, those are the two you want, and it's pretty much it. AJ Green could go off. I mean, he's a formerly exceptional wide receiver who's just gotten old. But, like Toby Keith says, he may have his I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was moment against the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm with Dennis. If it's among the wide receivers, Christian Kirk is the one that I have the most confidence in. But Zach Ertz really does look like he's been kind of the guy on the security blanket, especially since DeAndre Hopkins went out. Kyler Murray was looking for him in crucial situations last week, and I think he's a good play at a position that's sometimes a little bit hard to figure out.
Yeah, I'm 100% on board with playing Ertz as a top option this week. Murray peppered him with targets last week. I think the same thing happens as they're likely going to be behind against a very good Dallas Cowboys team. Matt, that is your NFC crush. That's the team that you really like to support when your Broncos aren't doing so well. So how are you approaching the Cowboys backfield? Zeke has looked much better since putting that knee brace on, looked more explosive the past couple of weeks. How are you valuing him and Tony Pollard?
Yeah, you're probably, I think you're probably still starting both because Pollard seems to be getting enough work as a rusher and receiver most weeks. I don't expect them to be up, like they were against Washington last week, where it ended up being garbage time largely the entire second half, and they pulled anyone of consequence because there was no point. I think this will be more competitive, but their offense has been doing well. Ezekiel Elliott is always a threat in the red zone. Tony Pollard's consistently getting carries and targets, so he has some flex value. I just think the ceiling, there was a time where Ezekiel Elliott was a no-brainer top 5 option. That time has passed.
Yeah, Elliott's looking a lot better, and I'm trying to find who it was. Somebody had posted on Twitter that this past week he reached his highest speed since like week 6. Now it was still like 2 mile an hour slower than he hit in week 6, but he's getting a little bit of quickness back. He's probably as healthy as he's going to be for the rest of the season. I love Zeke. I'm a big Zeke fan. So if I have to play a Dallas running back, I'm definitely going Zeke over Pollard. And I expect Zeke's probably going to be high-end RB2. Probably, I'd place a top 15 expectation on him.
Yeah, I think he could get some rushing touchdowns. Matt mentioned it. He's big in the red zone, right? And that's kind of where I think Dallas is going to have to be, because Arizona has been a decent team. I think both teams have a ton to play for in this game. So I think that Zeke could score you a couple touchdowns, and if he gets you 2, he could end up easily getting you. It may only be 14, 15 points, but if he gets you 2, that's all that matters. That's coming through for you. So I'm with Dennis on that. I think easy top 15 option this week, because I think he'll get a couple touchdowns. I am taking the Cowboys to win the game.
Cowboys for me.
Cowboys for me.
The 6-9 Carolina Panthers at the 7-8 New Orleans Saints. Dennis, are you playing any Panthers this week?
I think you got to play DJ Moore if you have him, at the very least in a flex spot. He's going to have his 3rd straight 1,000-yard season, he has his 3rd straight 1,000-yard season. He's the guy there. He's already tied his career high for touchdowns, and the Cam Newton, Sam Darnold quarterback rotation is at best suboptimal. It's a train wreck there, and I saw on NBC Sports Edge today a blurb that mentioned that owner David Tepper was thoroughly embarrassed by the state of the Carolina Panthers under Matt Rule. We could see Matt Rule get Chip Kelly'd here if we're not careful.
We could see him get ruled out.
Right. Bingo.
I'm with you. I'm playing DJ Moore, but he's more of a wide receiver 3 for me. That quarterback rotation leaves me cold.
Yeah, I wouldn't play him if you don't have to. I'm hesitant that he's going to do anything with Darnold coming back. Matt, aside from Kamara, is there any Saint you like in Week 17?
I think if Taysom Hill is out there, I'm going back to considering him as a super flex option. But that's pretty much it. Their offense hasn't been great. They're doing a lot with defense.
Yeah, I'm. If I have to start any Saints players, I'm praying to who's the founder of the Mormon Church? I'm praying to him for Taysom Hill. Joseph Smith. I'm praying to Joseph Smith for Taysom Hill's good health. That's for dang sure. If it's Ian Book or Taylor Heineke. No, it's not Heineke. Who do they have?
It's Simeon. They're all three of them are off the or none of their quarterbacks are currently on the COVID list. So it seems like we barring some shenanigans.
I feel like you have desperation plays at wide receiver or tight end. So hopefully with the new COVID rules, you're not that desperate. But it's Hill and it's Kamara, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to trust Hill, but again, it's the same thing. Running quarterback coming off COVID, I'd be a little hesitant to think he has a great game. But I think if he's out there, you probably don't have many other or they don't have better options, especially with as good as he was scoring earlier in the year. Saints for me. I don't think there's any shot the Panthers pull this off.
Yeah, Saints for me as well.
And for me,
the 2-12-1 Detroit Lions at the Seattle Seahawks, who are 5-10. Dennis, DeAndre Swift is active, and from everything we're hearing from Coach Dan Campbell, he is playing this week. Are you trusting putting him back in your lineup?
I think you have to. I mean, he was dynamic all season until he got injured. So if they're going to be dumb enough to play him, if he's on my roster, I suppose I have to be dumb enough to play him too. Don't outsmart myself. If you're rostering Swift and you're in the playoffs and he's active, I think you got to roll him out there.
Yeah, and they said Jared Goff is doubtful to play on Sunday, so I think they're going to want to have a strong running game to help. Another probable Tim Boyle appearance. So Swift, I'm playing him if he's active.
Yeah, I mean, if he's active.
Boyle's going to go, 12 for 25 with 130 yards?
Amon-Ra St. Brown still went 991 and 1 with Boyle as a quarterback. He gives them a decent receiver, and the other thing is Swift would give them another decent receiver.
Yeah. I think Swift and Amon-Ra could eat, regardless if Goff's in or not. Seattle, they're very good against outside wide receivers, but they struggle against the slot, which is where Amon-Ra is going to be, and you're likely going to assume DeAndre Swift's going to get a lot of passes out of the backfield. So I think, both of them should be really good in this game. Matt, how do we feel about Metcalf and Lockett during championship week with Seattle's offense kind of struggling?
Yeah, Russell Wilson just has not been the same since coming back. He's been a middling QB2. He seems to have zero chemistry with DK Metcalf, but at the same time, Metcalf is one of those guys where all he needs is one big play to kind of make your day. So you're still starting him in a flex. I like Lockett probably a little safer of the two options because he seemed to have still a better rapport with Wilson. So he's still a start for me, probably wide receiver 3 flex range as well. It just, gone is the day where you're counting on those guys to help save your championship run.
It's against Detroit, but this is the type of game where Seattle can shut their critics up for a week or so. If Penny goes out and runs well, Lockett and Metcalf there's no reason they shouldn't be able to put up some catches. And who'd have thought that, having your finger get all jacked up and get surgery would affect how you throw the ball? Go figure.
This is a game where they could shut their critics up, or they could give critics something to dine out on in the next 4 months. And I feel like that's where we're tracking. I think Seattle wants to. Those guys don't want to be there anymore.
Yeah, and that is exactly why I'm taking the Detroit Lions. I think Dan Campbell has this team fired up. I don't see much. Let's be honest. Even with Tim Boyle starting, I don't see that much difference in either of these teams. I think Detroit's playing harder. I'm taking the Lions.
I'm pulling for you to be right, but I'm taking the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm still taking the Seahawks. I think after an embarrassing home loss to the Bears last week, that they're going to try to get a win.
The Sunday night football game took a very weird turn this morning with the 7-8 Minnesota Vikings going up to Green Bay at the 12-3 Green Bay Packers. We know Kirk Cousins has now been ruled out. He is on the COVID list. He is very famous for saying, "If I die, I die," when it comes to COVID. Just to point out that he is not vaccinated, so there is no way he will be available by Sunday night's game, even with the new protocols. He is out.
Vikings fans would like to take him up on that as well.
It looks like from everything we're hearing and seeing on Twitter and being reported is that Sean Mannion will be the starter, not Kellen Mond. So Thielen is done for the season. That looked to be a good thing for KJ Osborne, who has really played well when Thielen has not been in. But now with Sean Mannion in, like, Matt, what does this do for the Vikings? Because you get Dalvin Cook back, but Dalvin Cook's also coming back from COVID, who, again, we've seen has really affected players. Justin Jefferson, who, don't get me wrong, it's an absolute stud. One of the best wide receivers, top 5 probably, wide receivers in the game. But if you look at his splits, he averages under 60 yards receiving outdoors compared to indoors. They're going to Green Bay Sunday night. It's supposed to be like 12 degrees outside, and he's got their third-string quarterback throwing him the ball. You're playing him. I don't trust any Vikings to come through for me in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing Dalvin Cook. I'm playing Justin Jefferson, but I've moderated expectations down quite a bit. This went from could be an interesting game to this could be a horse whipping.
I have nothing to add to those comments.
So let me ask one more question on that side of it. Now knowing this, because I think coming into this game, I agree with you, Matt, looked to be a very good game. You were avoiding Green Bay's defense that has been one of the better defenses for fantasy scoring. Has that now jumped up to one of the top options, even though they're going up against Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson, everything else surrounding this team? Would you be willing to play them in your fantasy championship?
Probably a top 12 option, but I don't know if I'd say they're at like a top 5 option, but they would be a fine play.
Yeah, you probably have to, you're playing them with the expectation that they're going to get some turnovers, because I would, even with Mannion, I would think that Cook and Jefferson are still going to get some yards and probably a touchdown between them.
All right. On Green Bay's side, Dennis, aside from Rodgers, Adams, and Jones, are you playing anybody else from the Packers?
I think you can make a case in deep leagues. We play in some, 3 running back, 4 wide receiver, 3 flex type of leagues. There's definitely a case for starting A.J. Dillon in the flex there. Dillon is playing, and this is the type of game too. You can make the gamble that Green Bay gets up and that they just use A.J. Dillon. I almost called him Corey Dillon. They just use A.J. Dillon to grind the clock out and get, he out at one of those games where he out snaps and out touches Jones. Jones outscores him for fantasy because he, catches a few receptions and scores a touchdown or 2. But that Dillon just kind of grinds the clock and ends up with, 23 carries for 83 yards or something like that. And Dillon has shown himself to be a capable pass receiver as well. So let's not forget that. MVS is the deep flex you want when you're praying for the Hail Mary. He's your 3 catch for 96 yards and a touchdown guy.
Yeah, I'll go with you that I think you make a case for Dillon being a flex consideration because they have used him as a grinder. I think, too, in part, they're trying to save Aaron Jones for what looks like another number 1 seed playoff run. in a championship week, am not taking a chance on MVS or Lazard because you don't know which one of them is going to be the second guy.
Well, it's MVS, but he is coming off of COVID.
Yeah, I could see Dylan having a good game, especially now if the Packers are able to just kind of run it up. Do we see a like Dallas Cowboys, Washington football situation like we did last Sunday, where then the Packers, they have the game well in hand, rest the guys because they're going to have a big week 18 as well. They have to win that game to make sure they secure that number one seed. So they start resting players, and that includes guys like Aaron Jones. So A.J. Dillon gets a ton of carry in the second half. I am taking the Packers to win this pretty easily.
Me as well.
Surprised you guys weren't on the Sean Mannion train.
I thought about it for like half of a half second, and then I changed my mind.
I was taking the Packers before, so nothing changes.
The 7-8 Cleveland Browns at Heinz Field, or should I say Ketchup Stadium, for the Pittsburgh Steelers. 7-1 here, going up. Big Ben's last appearance, from what we're hearing, there at good old Ketchup Field. Dennis, aside from Chubb, any Browns you're willing to play this week?
Yeah, I think Jarvis Landry is certainly wide receiver 3 territory. No, he's the show there now. They'll take a shot or two with DPJ, but Jarvis Landry is the guy. You know, he's not going to get you a ton of yards. It'd be nice if he could be as productive as, say, Hunter Renfrow, but the Browns just don't seem to see fit to give Landry that type of workload. But I could see Landry with 6 catches for 79 yards and, God willing, a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Landry is definitely worthy of a flex. I'm also waiting for the Steelers to somehow back into winning the NFC North or AFC North title, and this not being his final home game after all of this.
I mean, they've got a shot. We talked a little bit about it on Monday. This is the game right here, right? Like the loser's done. They've got no shot, and the Browns are done. If someone else wins, I can't remember who it is, which they'll know that going into the game.
I think we both, based on our picks, are thinking that Baltimore and Cincinnati lose. So
yeah, well, that's
fascinating week.
If Baltimore, so what the Browns actually, all the Browns need is for Baltimore and Cincinnati to lose this week, and then to them to win, and then win next week, and they're the AFC North champions after everything we've seen this season, which is insane.
So
to me,
let me
which
ask
is exactly why Baker's gonna shit the bed, and we're gonna lose, and it's over.
Glad you brought up Baker. If they win this week and they win next week and they win the AFC North, does all the talk about moving on from Baker Mayfield end?
I was going to bring this up anyways when we got to the Browns. I was waiting because I don't know if you guys saw Alex Van Pelt gave an interview this morning. I think it was to Mary Kay Cabot or something. I guess they were doing like some of their media stuff for the stuff. He says that Baker has been held back because of the harness. That is the actual issue with Baker right now, and he thinks we will see a much, much better Baker in 2022. Regardless,
so that harness on his left shoulder is holding back his right.
I mean, arm. I'm not a quarterback, so I
don't know.
Sometimes
those things can screw up your rhythm and your ability to play. And if he's in massive amounts of pain, that could be doing too.
You know what Bob Vila says? A good craftsman never blames his tools.
But we haven't heard Baker blaming the harness.
Yeah, Baker
we have other people who have played the position saying, regardless of what he says,
his proxy is doing it.
Well, I mean, Baker's never been afraid to say anything, so I don't. He hasn't.
His wife
so
certainly isn't.
Yeah, she really isn't. The one thing I'll say with Baker too. So I pay attention to a lot of college stuff, obviously. And there is a big quarterbacks coach in the high school college world. Quincy Avery was a former NFL quarterback as well. He did a little video that I watched on YouTube recently where he said the biggest thing with Baker is actually it's his feet. He's reverted back to that guy we saw like back in year 2. And that's what's been causing the issues. Where if he just said he went back and what game was it? It was just the Green Bay game. He went back and showed a lot of the stuff like he's not setting his feet right, and he's putting it like I can look at it from like a baseball point of view. You know, sometimes when you're trying to go the other way, when you're going and you're planting your foot, you kind of angle it toward where you're trying to put your bat, and you put your bat down and you try and angle the ball where you want it to go. that is what Baker's not doing. He's just kind of quickly throwing off of his back foot, not setting himself, not setting his foot. And Quincy Avery saying that's where you see him throwing ball high, not throwing to where he's supposed to. Outside of that, though, if you watch the Green Bay game, there's a ton of throws where he's doing everything perfectly. And he, again, just from him, the former quarterback, and I'm going to take his word for it, said that he thinks Baker is one of the best accurate passers in the game when everything is going right. And we've seen that from him. So I don't know what the issue is. Regardless whether they win the AFC North or not, I think he's their quarterback next year. I think they are 100% saying you got to be all in on yourself in 2022. If you do it, we're going to have to overpay you now because you just proved yourself. If you don't, they're probably going a different direction. That would be my guess on what happens with Baker.
Look, Kyle Juszczyk is the best running back in the NFL when everything goes right too. But shit doesn't go right on virtually every single play. On virtually every single play. Baker's got Saturday Night Fever feet. He's dancing. It is what it is. If everything goes right, sure, he's great, but it doesn't go right. And it's not going to go right. He's got to figure it out. And let's let him figure it out, in Carolina.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but that's the thing. I can't hate on him that much because we saw it last year where he was a phenomenal quarterback. Now, he wasn't the best for fantasy, and that's always been my thing is I've always said he's going to be like a top 12 fantasy quarterback, but he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Again, he had like 15, 16 touchdowns in the entire second half of the season and 2 interceptions. He was exactly what Quincy Avery said he was. He had a lot of great throws that won to Donovan Peoples in the end zone to beat Cincinnati. We saw it in I think it was his first or his second year against Carolina with Jarvis Landry, where he put it in between 2 defenders in the end zone. Great catch. So Baker has the tools. I don't know if it's been, again, dude's playing with like 8 injuries. I stub a toe and I debate texting guys say I'm not going to make it in for a show. Like, I don't know. I can't judge a guy based on him dealing with all those injuries. I think he's going to be fine. We'll see what the Browns do with them. Matt, you're obviously playing Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris just based on the upside that they bring you. If Freiermuth is cleared, is he jumped up in there for you as well? And if not, who else are you playing?
Yeah, so Freiermuth practiced in full yesterday. It looks like he's tracking to come back, but I'm not doing it. He's tight end 13 on the year, which seems appealing, but he hasn't seen more than 4 targets in any game since week 11. So he's not getting the volume of targets, passes, and yardage. You're basically hoping he gets a touchdown. I don't feel like that's a good enough gamble. Ben actually has not been practicing. So how exciting would that Monday night game be if Mason Rudolph got to play against Myles Garrett again? I suspect Ben will probably play, but I'm not interested in him. And I'm not really interested in Chase Claypool either. He could have a huge play, or he could give you nothing. They just don't have enough volume in their offense.
Yeah, I fully expect Ben's going to play. It's potentially his last home game. To not play would be something. I mean, I would think he'd have to be rolled out in a wheelchair to not play. And he plays kind of like he's been rolled out in a wheelchair. It's Johnson and Harris and nobody else.
I'm playing Freiermuth. I actually think he's going to be fine. I mean, that game against Cleveland earlier in the year, he put up like 12 points. That was the start of his run of getting a ton of targets. I mean, it's 7, 6, 9, 7, 4, 4, 3, 4, and then obviously last week he didn't play. Matt, you mentioned it. You really are kind of banking on him getting a touchdown, but I think he can do that against Cleveland's defense. I mean, Cleveland's going to be working to try and stop Deontay and Claypool, and that's going to allow Freiermuth to get open because those linebackers are really good. They've been good against the run this year, and bringing pressure, they've still kind of struggled against the tight end. So I think Freiermuth can get a touchdown. At this point, he gets you touchdown in 20 yards. Hey, that ends up likely being a tight end 1 week because that's close to 9 points. So I'm still willing to start him. A little bit worried, obviously, with him coming off the concussion. I think it's a second concussion this year as well, so that's definitely not good. But if he is cleared and playing, I am willing to play him because, again, this game matters for both of these teams in a major way that neither one of them has been eliminated. I have no doubt that even though Big Ben is saying he wants to retire, he would love to go out on top. So I think they're going to do everything they can to win this game, and I think Freiermuth is actually the matchup here for them against the Browns. I think he could have a good game. I am picking the Browns solely because I am a homer and I cannot pick against my team, but I don't feel great about it.
I think that's crap. You've picked against the Browns numerous times.
Only one time this year, actually, and I can tell you the team because I remember. It was the Los Angeles Chargers and my boy Justin Herbert, and that's the only reason I picked against him.
I'm taking the Browns as well.
I'm taking the Browns.
Yeah, matter of fact, that cost me last year because I picked the Browns every single week, and I ended up losing in our pick'em challenge by one game, and it was because even on the show I said I'm pretty sure the Browns are going to lose this game, but I picked them anyways. You just can't do it, man. Can't do it. One of these years, now they're going to go 17-0, and I'm going to look like a G. Wait, right? Yeah, 17, right? I'm not.
Yeah,
just
17. 18 weeks, 17 games.
Messing me up. They're going to go 17-0, and I'm going to look like an absolute genius. All right, so that will do it for us today. Everybody enjoy the new year. If you just like watching football, we've got a ton of great college football games on today and tomorrow, leading into Sunday, Monday. We'll be back again on Monday to recap everything and get you guys ready for, if you do play in Week 18 matchups, games for that as well. Enjoy the new year. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you guys so much for making this a great year for us. Gentlemen, if you have anything before we get out of here.
Go Buckeyes.
Happy New Year.